bids are in. The gavel has dropped. Ladies and gentlemen, here at WineBid, we are finally hammered. That's right. This is another episode of WineBid's podcast about all things wine value and wine retail. My name is Jeff McGurn. I'm on our marketing team here at WineBid. And with me, as always, is the illustrious Paul Walker, our wine auction expert. Welcome, Paul. How's everything going?
How's it going? Are you having something? I know last week we kind of skipped over what are you drinking because I think it was too early in the day, but you know.
I am. I'm having a glass of Pelicero Dolcetto de Alba.
Nice.
Don't judge me. I know you're not a huge Dolcetto fan.
Hey, I like all kinds of wines from Piedmont. It's Dolcetto, it's Barbera. I like them all. So
you like them all. Well, I love them all. This one, it was burning a hole in my cellar, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna crack this one because I'm thirsty. It's been one of those Mondays. There has been a lot going on. Let's jump right into it. This is our auction recap show. We've been seeing a lot of action at auction. The wines that got the most bids, and now granted, there were 5 of them in the lot. We had an 04 Ridge 3 Valleys, 5 of them.
It's like another like inexpensive Ridge wine. I think we talked about a while ago. It's like, hey, look what happened. It's like cheap Ridge, right?
It's cheap Ridge. I love Ridge 3 Valleys. I have like cases.
04 though, dude. That's almost 20 years old now.
19-year-old Ridge 3 Valleys. but at 15 bids on those bottles started.
I mean, yeah, Ridge
20 would have been a steal for that.
It's true. And like, that's also something you would have expected to have been drunk a long time ago, right? Like, It's not one of these Ridge wines that people put down for, 50 years or whatever. So,
but it is still absolutely stunningly delicious. In my very personal opinion, love me some Ridge 3 Valleys.
Were you one of the multiple bidders that bid on this?
No, I didn't bid on I already have so much Ridge 3 Valleys in my cellar.
You've got a vertical of 3 Valleys.
I got like a vertical of 3 Valleys, dropping down into a wine that we had mentioned last week, and I have this big grin on my face. I'm sure you remember. 2016 Antiquitera Opalin Pinot Noir, which by the way, we're talking about that as a value wine, and you were like, oh, I don't know that it's super value wine. That one, 23 trackers, 6 bids, started at 110, hammered at $270.
Well, I think we mentioned or made mention of the other labels, right? Like, and of course, like. From memory, I can't remember the name of the sort of higher end label Antiquitera wine, which I think actually already had a bid on it, but it was very expensive, right? It was $300 or something dollars. Yeah. But then there was the Oberlin and there was another one. And I was kind of venturing, like, I was wondering if maybe they were, younger vine fruit or something, or a second label of some kind, but clearly not, because I got more than double the reserve for that bottle. So that was pretty wild.
Clearly, there's a lot of value in that pricing because, we saw those get bid up a lot. The other one that I wanted to mention, which normally I wouldn't mention, but I have a kind of a funny story about this. 2020 Austin Hope Cabernet Sauvignon. We had 7 of those, which got 6 bids and started at 35, went to 42. This one, here's why this is kind of funny to me.
Does not make sense.
It makes no sense to me. It's a 2020. So it's a brand new. Second of all, in 2021, I went to Paso, actually went to the Austin Hope winery, right?
Not surprised. I'm not surprised.
We plan our winery trips around what wineries allow us to bring like a 3-year-old. and because most do not. Most That's are like, true. You want to bring a kid. And my kid, our kid wasn't like doing much, but anyway, so
they didn't have any grape juice for your child to taste. I assume.
Yeah, right. They didn't have any good, but my daughter was like greeting everybody that walked into the winery, which was kind of hysterical. She was standing at the entrance, like waving at people.
Oh, that's great.
It was fantastic. So anyway, but here's my funny story. I remember like drinking there, they're bringing out the flights and drink the Cabernet Sauvignon. And obviously this is what you guys are known for. So it's really cool to visit, this vineyard where you guys grow this stuff. And she's like, oh, no. We don't grow any Cabernet Sauvignon at Austin Hope. And I was like, what? She goes, yeah, we sold those long ago. And we buy all of the grapes from people we sold the vineyard to. So they don't, according to the ladies, like, we don't grow any of this.
What else do they pour down there? Because I've never, the only one I've ever seen is the Cab, because I think it's relatively available.
Yeah, the Cab is incredibly available, right? That one you can buy like almost anywhere.
Yeah, I was going to say.
The other stuff that they were selling, I mean, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, Merlot, Pinot Noir, Petit Syrah, Cabernet Franc. It was in a lot of different places. I was actually kind of expecting to have more Rhone blends, just because that's this, I love the Rhone blends that I get out of Paso, but I'll move on. But I just had to mention that because I thought that was hysterical. The thing that they're most known for, we don't grow any of that. Dropping down a little bit, 96 Pontic Canet. We had a bunch of those. Those we had 6 bids. Started at 100 and hammered at 135.
It's funny because we definitely talked about this wine, and I said, "Hey, that's not a bad price for mid 90s Pontic Canet." Is sort of before Pontic Canet got rebranded or however you want to put it. Anyway, it did surprise me that it went up to 135. That was quite a bit more than I thought.
I was also a little bit shocked that we saw it travel up that much. Pontic Canet is one of those ones that I feel like every year just seems to incrementally increase in value,
right?
a little bit more. I would even wager to say, had you invested in a ton of Pontic Canet a decade ago, great, you'd have to do the volume, but you'd certainly be making money because that stuff just does seem to increase in value.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of just when it took off, and in the late like 08, 09. I think the 09 vintage with the 100 points and then the 10, it kind of pushed the prices up going forward. And so it's kind of strange to me. It's almost more like rarity and collectability, but there was a lot of 96 Pontic. It's not like they didn't make a lot of it. So it does seem a little bit surprising. I was just randomly looking at all the wines listed from Pontic Canet just to see reserve pricing and also scores at a glance. And the 96 scores were actually quite underwhelming. That they weren't that great. So it's a little funny that it got pushed up, but hey, that's cool. They're it's a sought after producer now. It's not sort of something that you could find at Cost Plus for $40, which you used to be able to all the time. So.
Yeah, it used to reliably be at Costco sub $100.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Right? Almost every time I went to
tons
Costco.
of it, cases.
Yeah. Cases and cases of Pontic Canet, Lynch Bage, Beaucassel, Claude. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that you could very reliably find that I feel like has become significantly more sought after. I feel like it's also really good juice. So it's on the backs of high quality production. You've got Pontic Canet is a 7th growth, maybe 5th growth Bordeaux. Fifth growth Bordeaux that's really punching above its weight into the 2nd growth category.
It is, but I think part of that is because it was revamped, like I say, in later years, and so the mid 90s. You're right. The mid 90s vintages, like 95, 96 especially, were excellent, and I think for the level of quality per price, they were far better than a lot of other things in the 5th growth category that probably even cost more money. But it's a different wine, let's just say, than the wines that are produced in 08, 09, 10, and even 05 for that matter. By
the way, not all wines that we sell are super expensive wines, as everybody here knows. We've got some phenomenal deals, at more affordable price points. 07 Domaine de la Gravillette, Châteauneuf du Pape, 14 trackers, 5 bids, started at 20. Went to 28. 07, that one you probably really need to be drinking right now, I would think. I mean, CDPs will last time, but
I saw also something about 07 Chateauneufs were super overblown. I can't remember. It was probably on Berserkers or somebody that had a string of bad bottles and they got all upset and went on and said, 07's a terrible Chateauneuf vintage. But I do think some of the wines were a little bit hot, a little high alcohol, but still, that's a great deal, right? $27 for something from what could be considered a decent vintage. If you've tasted the wine, or if you've tasted other wines and didn't have wines that were out of balance, it's a great deal.
Even if you've not tasted any of those wines, it's 16 years of age, $28 bet on a bottle of Chateauneuf du Pape. That's not a crazy bet to make. If it's bad, like, you're not going to be kicking yourself. It's not like you're spending $2,800 on the bottle and you're like,
right.
And then it ends up being corked and you're super upset.
Right.
We're talking $28.
Right. I wanted to mention something because it's, as I'm looking at bids here, further down the list, just a couple down, there's a bottle of 2017 Gargiulo.
I was just going to mention that.
So this is a really cool winery because it's kind of under the radar. It's on Oakville Crossroad. It's surrounded by some extremely famous neighbors. And this wine is cool because it's got Sangiovese in it. We always talk about Napa Sangiovese. You and I are both fans. And
yes,
I always say, plant more Sangiovese in Napa. And, Oakville especially, it's like sacred ground for Cabernet. But this wine, look what happened. I was like, yeah, a prelay, it's not expensive. And it got bid up to $67 from $25.
Well, and by the way, speaking of Napa Sangiovese, we were just talking about this, almost no competition. I won some Staglin Sangiovese, and Staglin is top tier Napa cab producer.
Sure.
Which, by the way, they get a ton for their Napa cabs, and it's great stuff.
Yeah,
but
it is.
But they're producing Sangiovese that you can get at auction for $35.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's still, I just looked it up after you mentioned it, and there's still quite a few bottles left. So this is surprising, and I think it's because it's rare, and I also think because I got a buddy who works there. Shout out to Andrew Brooks, great buddy of mine, and he says that they don't. I think they ripped up all the Sangiovese, so this might be the last vintage where they made estate Sangiovese Aprile Super Oakville blend. So that was fun to see because I actually got to tell him about that. I just saw that just tonight. So.
I was just going to mention that. We also have other stuff that went up. One thing that I thought was really interesting, and this is something that we've been sort of talking about. I don't think we've spent as much time talking about it on the podcast, but we've had a lot of these California late harvest, some not late harvest, Rieslings, Gewürztraminers, all this stuff. 1977 Robert Mondavi Johannesburg Riesling, right? Which these are ones that I'm watching. They're coming to auction like $15, right? Which is very, very reasonable for something that probably stands the test of time. And I've been looking at all these come in, going and I've been bidding on a ton of them and getting outbid. And at WineBid, we don't rebid, but $15 to start, and it hammers after 5 bids at $50, $49, right? Yeah. Which I thought was super cool.
That is cool. I think, it's rarity. It's late 70s. Mondavi is kind of the heyday. Some of the best red wines they ever made were from vintages right before and after that. And so I think that is just a function of rarity. And I think it's dry Riesling too, right? It's low octane. It's like 12.5% or 12% anyway on the label, but I don't think it's made in a sweet style. I think it's on the drier side, but that's always fun to see and not too surprising just because of the vintage and the collectability.
And I don't know as much about this, but apparently this I keep seeing this term Johannesburg Riesling, which I guess has been phased out as sort of a descriptor, but it's probably something you're more familiar with than I am.
I wish I could tell you exactly what was going on as far as varieties and, in old California, but I'd have to look it up. There are, I believe, still some Napa or let's just say, local or California or West Coast, whatever you want to say, producers of Johannesburg Riesling, but I can't tell you as to what the difference is, between this variety versus others that were planted, because obviously there's still Riesling planted and harvested in the state elsewhere. So I don't know. I wish I do.
Just a couple more that I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, or if you have anything to mention, we had a 2014 Alpha Omega Toyon Vineyard Pinot Noir. 4 bids, started at 30, went at 42. I thought that one was super interesting to see. I'll actually mention I called this out the last one. We had a bunch of Anthill Farms coming to auction.
There was a bunch of it.
And I love Anthill Farms, and so when I see that, I was like, oh my God! I actually did not bid on it, and I should have bid on it because I love Anthill Farms, but instead,
there's probably some left.
There's probably some left.
Yeah.
Well, instead, I picked up a bunch of the Linmar estate stuff based on, some other people's recommendations because I just have not had a lot of Linmar. And one of our resident winos here, our head of, our CTO, Marty, he's probably going to be listening to this, pulling his hair out because he loves Linmar and he was really upset with us for.
I was surprised he even made mention of it because I thought all he drank was wines from the Northwest because he's such a fan of them and
such a fan.
He's been blogging about Northwest wines for years and years. So I figured, I was like, what? Marty doesn't drink Linmar. He doesn't drink Sonoma Coast Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but I guess he does.
I disagree with you. I was just surprised that he was listening to our podcast at all. But like anybody but you and I and
it's true, and a few robots and
a few bots were listening to our podcast. And then there was one that was kind of interesting, this Beau Ferrer. That one, we had two of them, 4 bids, started at 75, one was 92. So there was a little bit of action there.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting, actually, because there always seems to be a little bit of it around kind of filtering in now and again. It's not necessarily rare, but this vintage 2010 Upper Terrace, this might be one of those wines that people are just kind of looking out for because they know it's very good at this point. But yeah, that I haven't seen bidding activity like that on Beau Ferrer wines, recently. So it's probably been a while since it was last in auction. And
then one last thing I'll mention, was the 2019 Bodegas Alto Ribera del Duero 3-bottle lot. That one started at 124 bids, took it to 170. Sometimes we see action on Spanish wines. I'm a fan of Ribera del Duero wines, and I thought it was cool to see something like that, especially a 3-bottle lot. Even at 170, it struck me as a pretty good deal for Ribera del Dueros, right? Granted, those are young. Those are probably going to need to sit in a cellar for a little while before they really get consumed at peak, but I thought that one was super interesting as well. Yeah,
no, that's true. And I think the 3-bottle lots sometimes can be, people aren't always looking for a 3-pack. They're more interested in bidding on just a single bottle. But that was interesting to see multiple bids on a 3-bottle lot because we don't offer a ton of those. And we have them generally when we have larger quantities of a specific wine, but in a lot of cases they don't necessarily get bid up. So, and I think you can actually find some reasonable deals in the in the 3-bottle lots and some of the larger lots when a lot of folks are searching for stuff under a certain price point. And when you search for that, it doesn't necessarily come back as the price per bottle. You may see something that's like $120, $170, and you're like, well, this seems expensive. But when you break down on the per bottle price, it's actually not unreasonable to pay. Well, yeah, I think that reminds me of I think it was the 3-pack of Domaine Leflevre Pouilly Montrachet we talked about.
Yes,
and I thought I had recalled the same wine that was in a previous auction, and there was another bottle that was far more expensive than basically 3 put together. So even the 3-pack itself wasn't that bad of a deal once the one that you mentioned. So go figure. Look, it was still a deal for 3 versus buying 1.
Well, not only that, but sometimes you can get them OWC too. Now,
right. I mean, if they're not put together by the account manager.
Right. If it's not put together, if it's not like something merchandised by like one of our account managers, sometimes you'll get something. You'll get 3 bottles or 12 bottles or 6 bottles of OWC.
Sure.
And I think to me that's like a nice value add because I just think it's cool to have the crates. I mean, you probably have 1 million of them at home. Paul's guest house is made.
I don't have room for wood. It's all the wood doesn't leave the warehouse. It
doesn't leave the warehouse. It goes.
I don't have any room whatsoever.
No. Anyway, anything else you wanted to bring up before we wrap up our recap?
No, it's funny because we talked about the Duke's family wines, and I think I'd mentioned there were quite a few bids on those, and they all hammered within I would say probably $5-10 of reserve. So some good deals there on an Oregon producer I was definitely not familiar with. There was actually a fair amount of Gargiulo. Speaking of Gargiulo, there was quite a bit of it that sold in last night's auction as well.
There's
I noticed another bottle of that Aprile Red went from $30 to $65. So it wasn't just the 17 that got multiple bids on it.
Some 98 Claude Duval went from
really?
45 to 62. And by the way,
interesting.
Do you know why I love Claude Duval?
Why do you love it?
Because you can take your kid to a wine tasting at Claude Duval. That's why.
Yeah, I have to say that's always been a fun place to visit. And they always break out awesome wines if you start to talk to one of the people there, and they're, you get a report going. They bring bottles out from underneath the table and they're like, try this, try that. Yeah, they've always been awesome. So that's good to know that they allow kids, because I'll have to visit.
Well, I was gonna say that's gonna make a difference to you now, buddy. Now that you've got the two kiddos, it's a beautiful winery. Claude Duval is gorgeous. It's really nice. They have I think they have great wine.
Oh, they do. It's always been underappreciated. And you can see now, like your example you just mentioned, that it's getting to be, it's getting to have a stronger secondary market following than it ever did. Because for years and years and years, you could find just phenomenal vintages like the 78 Reserve, which is incredible wine. It's one of the best California Cabs I've ever had. 87 Reserve, incredible. They were never expensive until now. And by the way, they have really good snacks and stuff Oh, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah. My daughter especially loved the breadsticks that they would bring out.
Oh, sweet.
As a part of the tasting.
We got to get up there.
We got to get up there. It's fantastic. Anyway, all right. This has been our auction recap. Stay tuned. Our next episode, we're going to go over some of the wines coming into auction this week, and you're not going to want to miss it because we have a ton of really interesting juice coming into auction this week. There's a lot to talk about. For WineBid and Finally Hammered, my name is Jeff McGurn. This is Paul Walker, and happy bidding to everyone. Cheers.
Cheers.